you everyone. So in the last video we talked about asynchronous in JavaScript. We performed some asynchronous actions, like we created a promise and we waited for the promise to be fulfilled. Then we used the .then to perform actions based on the response we got from our promise. We use the set timeout function and we run another function inside of it. Today we are going to be building on that. We are going to be working on something called asynchronous functions. So let's go ahead and navigate back into our password manager folder. We are going to be using that today. So we could have functions like this. We could have functions add, for example. Functions add, for example, and function, supposed to be function add, and inside our function what we just want to do is return a plus b. So now also we could have functions that inside the function we are going to be waiting for, like there are going to be some asynchronous actions, like we are going to be waiting for promises and all of those things. So one thing JavaScript have provided is for you to create your function and define it as asynchronous beforehand. So you can just have a sync in front of your function add, and then if you have a promise, what you just have to do is inside of your function you just have to await the promise, so the name of the promise. So for example, let's say we have variable my promise is equal to new promise. What we can just have over here is we can just await my promise. So before any further action is taken inside this function, it would first wait for this promise. This await function only works inside a synchronous function. So rather than having to write my promise dot then blah blah blah, you can just await my promise and get the value inside your promise. So we are going to go ahead to be putting that into use today, and we are going to be using that to create our password manager. So in the last two videos we installed an npm repository called Node.js. Node.js is used for storage. You can use Node.js to store data from your program on your computer. So for you to actually access the npm module that you have installed, what you have to do is you have to declare a variable, and since our node persist is going to be helping us with storage, let's go ahead and name that storage. So the name of our variable is storage. So we initialize that into a function, and the function is require. So the require would be require a string. The string is going to be the name of the module we want to require. So we just have to put node persist in here. Then we have node persist stored inside storage, so we can access every property of node persist. So now what we can have here is we can still have this printing out starting password manager. But now let's go ahead to actually make some action with that. Now this storage function is always a promise because it actually has to take something from your system. So let's declare an asynchronous function. Let's name it function store. So we declare a function store, and it's asynchronous in nature. Now let's go ahead and initialize our storage. You need to first initialize the storage. So storage dot init Now if you click on the init, you see that it's a storage. Over here you can see that it's a promise. Actually it's a promise. So because it's a promise, we might have issue running this. So let's go ahead and run this first. Let's call our store function afterwards, store. So let's go ahead and run node app.js, and it starts password manager. This is because it has all time to wait actually before it actually ends it. So now if we now go ahead to actually set an item, you want to store an item, what do you use? You use storage dot set item as a function that is pre-built into the node persist. So storage dot set item, it receives two arguments. One is the key and the next is the value. So the key is like the name of what you are storing, so that when you are accessing it you can use that. So for example, I want to store my name, and the value of my name is, let's say, Jaga, for example. If we go ahead and run this, we are going to be having multiple errors because it's telling me storage.setItem is not a function. Why is that? Storage.setItem is not yet a function because it's a promise, and the promise has not been met yet. So what we have to do is actually have to await anything that has to do with storage. So we just have to use await, and we have to use await over here. So immediately we run this, we can see that it has started our password manager for us. So we've initialized storage, and now we've set item to name. We've set item, we've stored name as Jaga into the storage of the system. So now what do we want to do next? We want to get the account that we have actually stored. So to do that, let's take this off to be sure that it's working, and we can just say await storage dot get item, and we stored name earlier on. So if we call store, let's first go ahead and let's set this into a variable. Let's say var name is equal to this. Then afterwards we can now console.log name to the screen. So since we are calling our store function, let's go ahead and run that, and you can see that we have Jaga print out to the screen. So now what you can see here is that we have already stored it earlier on. Let's go ahead and do a couple more stuffs, like let's remove this. We can just go ahead and set more. Let's delete this and await storage dot get dot set item, actually set item. Let's set item real name also, and let's set that equal to Kazim David. So we can now go ahead and run this once again, and it starts our password manager, and we assume that it stores this. Now if we go ahead and remove this as well, and we then say let var name is equal to await storage dot get item, then we do for name, and then we duplicate this and do for real name as well, So we stored real name, so real name. Then we can just do console.log. We have over here, we can just say name, then let's add a space in between. You can concatenate using the full stop. Let's use it. And then real name. Okay, let's use the plus for our concatenation. So if we go ahead and run this now, we can have Jaga Kazim David. So you can see it's storing all this. And if you want to check where it actually stores it, you can check in here and you can see some files. So key, real name, value, Kazim David. So it helps you store key name. So no matter how much data you want to store, you can use the node persists module to actually make some storage on this. So what we are going to be doing is we are going to be using this feature that we have to actually create our password manager. We are going to be doing that in the next video. From the next video is going to be quite longer because we are creating projects and we have to create it from start to finish. So prepare yourself for that, and that will be the end of this video.